Right, right. Yeah. So I actually have a presentation that I've been doing now a few times called I don't know, something along the lines of like how do you estimate and like a pro for your rehabs. And what I do in that presentation is I go through the contractor's vision, right? So when you see a house of any stature, there's always a process, right? And especially in building and construction, you've got to have organization, right? There's so many logistic uh, elements to a project. I can have anywhere from 50 line items to 300 line items. And so just knowing your way around the house, the order of things, like I said, called critical path is very, very important. So just speaking to that, you've got your big five, right? So you start with your big five, your MEPs, which are your mechanicals, also known as HVAC, your heating and air conditioning, all your ducts, exhaust fans, stuff like that. Then you've got your electrical, which is your E, and then you have your plumbing, which is the P. So your MEPs are huge. Those are always going to be permitted. So you always have to make sure that you got those nailed down first because they're going to cost you the most and you're going to have to pay the highest dollar usually to get those done because they take certified licensed professionals. Then you have structural in there. You got to make sure that if it's a fire damage like yours, like you're talking about there, or that one, or the one we just got done, you're going to have possibly windstorm. You're going to have a structural engineer reports that are going to tie into IECC, the energy uh, energy man, I'm missing the word, but the energy codes, right? So it's got to be all buttoned up from the outside in, and then from there you're going to have the foundation of the house. Foundation's got to be on point. You got to know what's going on with that because it doesn't matter what you do with anything on the inside if you're putting windows in on a slanted house or something that's going to have to get adjusted later. You're just double working yourself, right? So these are what I call kind of the uglier things, but they're so critical to the nicer things, the kitchens, the baths, the pretty stuff, and then obviously the roof. You got to have your roof. You got to make sure that no water, no elements are getting in. So that's really where you start, and it's not necessarily always the funnest parts, but you get those things done right. You got to think with the end in mind, right? So a lot of people are like, "Oh, the high glitz and glamour," right? Or I can get it done cheap, but you got to think with the end in mind. What's the goal at the end of this? What's your exit strategy, right? Oh, I'm going to sell it. Okay. Well, if you're going to sell it, how are you going to sell it? MLS. Okay. Well, when an MLS buyer comes in, they put it under contract. What's the first thing they do? What's the first thing that an MLS buyer does? They go get an appraiser and an engineer or inspection, right? So you get that inspector out there, and all of a sudden things don't pass, you got a big problem. So definitely got to stick to that critical path. You got to make sure all the mechanicals, all the operations of the house are done right. Make sure those are budgeted first. Then you leave it off to your design items.